of our greatest truths. As this comet passes, it's actually going to be passing over the Earth on February 1st of 2023. And this is a time in which we're looking at the collapse of our civilization, the rise of AI, most recently in the form of Chat GPT, which can be used for spreading misinformation, which has put out a little bit of false information itself already. So we have a glimpse of things to come. There's another story I saw about Walmart drones delivering to people's homes. This is already taking place. As the rise of AI takes place, we see the rollout of the robot apocalypse in slow motion. They've been doing it in slow motion for a number of years as to not disrupt the sheep. But most of us have seen the Boston Dynamics robot backflipping, or the dog, the robot dog from AT&T, the dog that won't be kicked over, that'll respond to a kick and be able to balance back and continue on its way. So it's all being unleashed at a time in which we feel the cage coming down. Here we are several years after the lockdown. And the lockdowns in Australia have been far worse than in the United States, or the lockdowns in China, or in New Zealand. Very draconian laws in New Zealand regarding protests during COVID. So it's an ominous future. I'd like to be in the middle of nature, in the middle of a field somewhere, meditating, connecting with the earth, connecting with the sun, being at my best in every way, shape, or form. But due to circumstances beyond my control, I'm in an urban environment. And as I see these headlines unfold, I think about my own life and my immediate surroundings. And it's a tough time. I'd like to be in Oregon, or parts of Portland for that matter, but Portland has gone downhill in a way that has broken the hearts of many lifelong Portlanders, some of which have fled the city, some of which have stayed to experience the new nightmare. I have a few friends left in Portland that are still there, not a lot, but I felt in my heart that it was not the place to be for the coming disasters of the future. That's what I truly believed years ago when I was hosting Outside the Box on cable access TV, so I followed my perceived inner knowing at the time, and maybe it really was for the best. And I fled west, or rather east of Oregon, and found my way to certain parts of Colorado. And that was its own adventure. I think ultimately we got to rise above the fear of death, and we're going to be where we're going to be when it happens. No place is 100% safe, and we got to come to some level of acceptance of that, because we're very close to some very disruptive things, and we have to be above the fear of death, some way, somehow, without being radicalized into some sort of a movement, which happens to humans. When humans face the perceived possibility of death, strange behavior unfolds. When faced with the potential of a doomsday event, cults appear. And people have their different agendas that organize some of these groups out there. Some people think they can just run out and join an intentional community. Well, unless you have some experience doing that, it's going to come as a challenge. Finding the right community. And a lot of things require a certain amount of money just to begin to put your foot in the door to one of these communities, at least in this modern day and age. Things are expensive, and it reflects itself in every aspect of our lives. And now, looking at certain properties off the grid, I see a doubling in price. Things have definitely gone up in recent years since the so-called pandemic. So it's more difficult than ever to go off the grid. And as I mentioned in a recent video, Saguache County is expecting homes to be built over 900 square feet in order to receive a building permit. That means tiny homes or smaller homes that have been built undercode that are already on properties are at risk of being cited. And these citations can lead to prosecutions in some cases that can force people off their land or harm them economically in some other way. These are the things that are taking place. It's part of that ominous future. People having nowhere to go and being reliant on the cities, including many, many homeless. That's dystopian. That's a dystopian reality. Such extreme have and have-nots. There's such waste of money, not only in Ukraine, but many other places and ways, methods, so many ways in which the corporations are ruling over the people of the globe, especially here in the United States. And there's so many ways in which we are being turned against each other through mass migration, immigration, and through other means. I'm not against immigration, but I do recognize that it's happening at such an incredible rate that I understand why some people feel replaced and react the way that they do. Although we should understand that we're being played off against each other and that we should be seeking to help each other wake up to the truth. Because there is no, in the end, no perfect human or a certain type of ethnic human that they prefer. It's a hybrid human that is interspersed with technology. And there's a number of humans from around the world that are ready to interface with technology, to take the microchip, to go to the next level, and we're being taken to the next level. I don't believe every theory that's out there about vaccines. And I don't believe every theory that is out there about anything for that matter. There are certain things that I do not subscribe to, and there are certain things in which I see some truth in it. But ultimately, we got to think for ourselves and stay out of these polarized gangs and groups because it doesn't serve us. The savior complex does nothing for us. But it's going to come back. Now Trump is coming back to Facebook. It's not about being for that or against it, but having an opinion on propaganda. Facebook is propaganda. Facebook controls what people see on their news feeds. Facebook is not what it once was. So Facebook will run certain programs when it is the agenda to do so. And the agenda can be ran through the Democrats and Republicans, the left and the right. Facebook can make deals with both to maintain the same global agenda, to maintain the same level of propaganda. So it doesn't need to stay loyal to Trump during all those years. It could seem like it's against Trump by banning Trump as it did years ago. But it's all for show. It just martyrs the people that are banned. It martyrs Donald Trump. It's martyred Alex Jones. They haven't been banned. They're bigger than ever. And you see what they're doing now with their bigger than ever platforms as they operate completely outside of Twitter and Facebook. They're able to draw a massive audience and then promote people like Nick Fuentes, who's a white nationalist who believes in the ethno-state. And things like that make Americans look bad. It makes the truth movement for people that go down that direction look like fringe right-wing maniacs. I want nothing to do with it. Other people want nothing to do with it. But still, social media, AI, and algorithms are promoting many supremacy messages. We've seen an increase in this since 2014 and 2015. It hasn't gone away. It's not going to go away. So I have a lot of concerns about this ominous future and AI rising, promoting that type of content. There's a headline out there about people chatting with an AI Hitler. I kid you not. Look it up. There's a previous article about a Microsoft AI program that was spitting out Nazi content. Then there's something about ChatGPT, which when prompted, if you prompt it enough, it may give you instructions on how to harm certain people or torture certain people. There's a certain article claiming that some misinformation was spread or something to that degree regarding certain mosques and something regarding the torturing of Iranians. And these are things that I came across early in the week. We're going to see more of this But if people choose to not look at it, then they're not going to see it. Many people are just going to look at how Chat GPT is going to serve them and make them money. Self-serving, narcissistic individuals on this planet today are blind to the threats coming their way because they're only looking out for themselves, and not even very well. Because to truly look at yourself, you have to look at your relationship to the community, to a larger world, and not allow yourself to be duped into soul-sucking manipulations and agendas. Because here on this planet, there is a psychic spiritual warfare agenda taking place. There is a war taking place to a certain degree on each and every one of us in some way, shape, or form. They, whatever it is, it wants our soul in this world, bound to this world. And it is not our true destiny to be in this type of enslavement. So there is a spiritual answer to all this. I'm in an environment now that has a lot of thug behavior and culture taking place, a lot of shootings, a lot of criminals that come out from the city to the city that I'm in to rob, burglarize, and in some cases assault and shoot people. We see stories in the news locally of 14-year-olds shooting 11-year-olds. We see, in certain circumstances, gunshots all throughout the city on New Year's Eve and Christmas Day and other holidays where people think that's normal to shoot their guns in the air and not care where the bullets drop, which could damage someone's roof or end someone's life. I live in an environment now, here and now, where there is no respect for life. There are many ways in which black people have been turned against other people of color. And I talk about some, not all. Just like every demographic has its issue. So what we're seeing now in today's society is BLM being used for propaganda to a certain degree. All lives matter, which is the reality. But and I don't mean that as a right-wing slogan. They use that as a right-wing slogan. All lives matter. There are people that do that. That's not what I mean when I say all lives matter. I mean that Afghan lives actually matter. Iraqi lives actually matter. Asian lives of various kinds matter. Down to South America, through Mexico, different places in different worlds, the Aborigines, the lives matter. But you don't hear people say that. So there is a supremacy complex that's taking place today in both whites and blacks. And some others. We see supremacy in India, Hindu nationalism, and there are attacks on Muslims there, which are horrific. I've seen some violent footage on Twitter of a Muslim student of computer science being beaten for talking to a Hindu girl. Being beat viciously. And I've also read stories about how Facebook has targeted Muslim groups around the world, from Myanmar to some of the other places that have been mentioned. A lot of it is just beyond my memory at this point. I've read so many articles, and some of it's so disturbing. It's like I don't want to know it all, how bad it really gets. But consistently since 9/11, folks, there's been a consistent targeting of Middle Eastern bloodlines. And even if they want to take a certain amount of the population from one country and move them over here, it's not truly to replace white people, as some claim. But they act as if, in some cases, that is the agenda. And it creates chaos and toxicity on social media and society. And we have to rise above that. They have artificially created the have and have-nots. Our economic structure is messed up and upside down. And there's another easier way, I'm sure of it, to distribute resources and manage this society. So this is intentional. As long as we're in this modern day society and the modern day media, these things are going to take place. Who knows if we ever really will see a full-on collapse of everything. We may just see disturbances upon disturbances upon disturbances. Again, there's been predictions for the collapse of everything for multiple decades, perhaps beyond that. So we could also be experiencing this cycle decade after decade, experiencing the perception of the collapse right around the corner, but it never seems to come. But I'll tell you what, things are getting so crazy with technology, with oppression and control of the population. Many people are going to beg for the collapse and want the collapse, and in some cases, their own deaths. A little bit of warning there, though. I suspect that's what the evil forces that are targeting us humans down on the ground, I suspect that's what they want. I suspect they want a population to off themselves, to want to die, or perceive that the earth is dying, or that the sun is dying, or that we're dying. Back to the vaccines. Some people took them, some people didn't. We shouldn't be at war with each other based on the decision. We shouldn't wish death on each other. And some, I say some, people tend to do that out of anger because of the polarization that's taking place. We shouldn't have been this polarized to begin with. How about that? We should have prevented that. That way there wouldn't have been such a divide. QAnon is a psyops. I've said that since day one. Day one, including that about Mr. so-called savior of the so-called free world, Donald Trump. I've called bullshit on that from day one. People didn't like that. People called themselves conspiracy theorists, but failed to see the elephant in the room yet again. Mr. Operation Warp Speed. They are all together, in my eyes, coordinating this oppression. Coordinating the cover-up of past major world events like September 11th, 2001, which has led to absolute devastation and destruction of the Middle East. Remember, they have spread depleted uranium in that land, meaning some places are uninhabitable. They have created refugees out of thin air through their widespread destruction, all by design. I'm sure there are many refugees out there that would like their own homeland where they can be in peace and not be forced to flee somewhere else for their own survival. That's a very traumatic experience. So why are so many people around the world fleeing for their very survival? Where is the compassion there? Why shouldn't people wake up to what's taking place and maybe engage in a little bit of pushback, like they pushed back against the vaccines, push back against some of this other crap that's taking place in our name, and manipulation of foreign countries? It's a toxic foreign policy that has no shame in arming Saudi Arabia for many, many years, as they have committed genocide against the people of Yemen. Some of that has been curtailed in recent years, but there's still a very deep, deep connection, obviously, between Saudi Arabia and the United States, and Saudi Arabia and China. And we're all connected, these major superstate nations, in one way, shape, or another, even though they may seem to be at odds with one another. So, people wonder if there really be a World War III because of this integration that we've seen for so many years. We could see the perception of a clash that they manufactured themselves to bring about an in-game agenda. And it's a similar concern that other people have, that we could see a distraction or a complete, destruction, a complete destruction of the modern day of life to bring forth, to force us onto the self-driving cars, the robot cities, well, I guess what they're calling now the 5-minute cities. So we can experience major energy outages and things upon the way that lead to these types of new cities. And there's also talk of money missing from bank accounts, and some believe that this is happening deliberately to push us onto the CBDCs, the digital currency, which will strictly control capital, funds. Some people say that in certain circumstances, money has to be spent by a certain amount of time. This may be implemented in China already, I'm not sure, but these are some of the concerns. There's quite a few concerns about the digital currency and how people will be able to spend their money, how it will be spent, how it may interface with other technologies. There's also something about something being released by Amazon, which is a palm scanner, a biometric palm scanner of some type that verifies identity in order to buy and sell on Amazon. As I said before, drones are set to be delivering small products to people's homes in communities across the United States, starting with a few demo locations. So it's all being normalized. ChatGPT, robots giving answers to the world's problems, it's being normalized. Robots delivering products to people's homes, drones in the sky, no longer a conspiracy, it's being normalized. And just when I got an ID a few years ago, where I happened to live, they had a biometric requirement for the real ID. And years ago, all these were just simply a conspiracy theory. And now it's all being rolled out. It could be said that there's nothing to say now or warn about now because it's all taking place. It's a matter of where you are, who your tribe is, how you're going to survive these challenges. We're long past due for awakening people. There has been a split in consciousness, and it's been taking place for years. And now they've made it more difficult than ever to use social media to reach people because of shadow banning. We're at a time now where there should be more communication than ever about these issues and some of the things that we see upon the horizon and how we're going to survive these things. There should be more communication than ever, crossing political spectrums and boundaries, nationalities, but there's not. There's just a lot of noise. But the internet can still do some good. And hopefully, before all this is over, I'll be able to do some good with the words that I say and the ideas that I have. This system has set up Afghanistan for a fall, for failure, for a collapse. It's been fucked with for years. This is nothing new. Most people know nothing about the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. Most people know nothing about the Western money that has ended up in the hands of radical Muslims, which have actually been used by the global elite to demonize peaceful Muslims around the world. You see, it is my opinion that there is an anti-human agenda, and there's different racial programs out there based on what your tastes are, but without a doubt, there's an anti-Middle Eastern human agenda, and there always has been in our society. Now, you might see things in the media and from certain corporations that feature mixed race couples and a positive view of immigration, and it may seem like that's the ultimate agenda to help those people and leave Americans behind, and that's bullshit. It is an agenda to make you believe that you're replaced. They may do a little bit of unfair practices along the way, discrimination, but it's all part of an agenda to enrage our population. And it's good to be calm, non-reactive, and to not be played by the agenda in the stage-managed civil unrest scenario, which precedes, of course, a potential World War III scenario. Many people blame Muslims by 9/11, for 9/11, because of 9/11, etc., etc., etc. Never forget, I have never believed that Afghans on their own committed those attacks. According to the official story, Saudi Arabia was the nexus. So even within the official story, you don't even have to go out there to conspiracy. Within the official story, Saudi Arabia had an influence over what happened. And they're one of the greatest allies of the United States. The United States sells weapons to Saudi Arabia. Normal people on the left and right should have woken up to what was happening to Afghanistan years ago when a target was put on its back. People should be asking themselves, why has there been an attempt to suppress those people? Why is there an attempt to starve those people as they have been robbed by Joe Biden? You see, the Taliban's in power, but why do you think they're in power? Because they've been allowed to be in power. You don't think the world's largest super military in the world can defeat so-called radical Muslims living in impoverished conditions? I've always asked that question, and they've never actually won the so-called war on terror. It just keeps getting extended and extended till they extend it in our direction and point in our fingers. In our direction. With their accusatory fingers. I haven't seen or received support because I'm seen as a kook or out there by today's Muslims. By being not a Muslim and not speaking the language, it has somewhat isolated me from people that I care about because they're human beings. I don't subscribe to any of the world religions that are out there, but I also don't subscribe to beliefs that people should be punished because of their beliefs. I don't believe that. I've never been brought into that mind control. I don't blame white people for everything. I don't blame the Christians for everything. I see that people are manipulated by dark, harmful forces. Some call them demons. Some call them archons. Some have other names for them, but a name isn't really needed. We're not alone in this universe. And there has been a spiritual, physical attack on multiple populations in the Middle East, and has created a rise in darkness on our planet. And so if people don't like immigrants, which many don't, and they don't like the idea of being replaced, then why is there widespread support for politicians and others that have helped destroy the Middle East? DeSantis oversaw torture to a certain degree. He was a military lawyer at Guantanamo Bay. This is the supposed new savior of the American people? Because you don't need Trump to continue the agenda. As I said before, you don't need Bush to stay in power. You don't need Obama to stay in power. You don't need Trump to stay in power. They just keep passing on the baton, and nobody seems to get this. Some people say, oh, I'm free of the left-right paradigm, but go Trump. Trump's going to save us. Fuck that shit. Every 4 years we go through psychosis. I used to have a huge fan base in Portland, but when I didn't get behind Obama in 2008, 2009, I lost a lot of that support base because I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. And I didn't drink the Kool-Aid when the next puppet arrived, Mr. Operation Warp Speed. And Biden comes in, who's supposedly the savior again. He's going to save us from Trump. Some would be led to believe. And we see what he has done to Afghanistan. I agree that there should have been some sort of curtailing of the occupation. There shouldn't even have been one. But there's a way in which you pull out and you transfer wealth, resources, and there's a way you don't do it if you care about a population. And what they did is they fucked over everyone. And people talk about racism, they focus on things happening here in the United States and blacks versus whites and things of that nature. But what about multiple racial groups working together under the guise of the U.S. military and private corporations, stepping on the face of Afghanistan with their steel-toe boots? It's like we just forgot all of a sudden. We got distracted by climate change alarmism. We got distracted by COVID. We got distracted by this. But years ago, there were protests because people were told it's okay to protest. It's okay to be against the war. It's okay to want the occupations to end. And then people just developed some sort of forgetfulness. As soon as Obama was in Portland, Oregon, there were no more anti-war protests. People wanted to believe that things would be fixed. They wanted to believe that he was a savior more than they actually cared about the Afghan people. This is all because of 9/11. The official story of 9/11. The world blames the Afghan people for 9/11, and we have witnessed a great lie upon our society. And it is something, in my opinion, that separates those that either serve the darkness or serve the light. Okay? You got to be at a certain level of mentality to blame the people of Afghanistan for the 9/11 events with the amount of information that's out there. On that note, David Ray Griffin is who I would refer you to. Buy his books. He passed away in November of 2022. But David Ray Griffin was not a typical conspiracy theorist. He is a theologian with 50 to 100 books under his belt. He didn't deviate into speculating about the New World Order or the collapse. With a scientific perspective, he looked at the glaring holes in the official story, and he alone woke many people up without diverting into other side issues. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I have no faith in humanity as a collective until I start to see more compassion based on what they've done. I hear about all this white guilt. I hear about all these people on the left that supposedly don't like themselves, and people are talking about the anti-white agenda in relation to things that are happening in this country. But I've never seen that so-called left or those so-called protesters, nor Antifa, take a stand against what's taking place overseas in a strong way, consistently. As I said, people would protest in the 2000s, then it faded out of their memory, and then they became co-opted for these social justice movements that are not helping people of color. They're not. It's creating more division. We're more divided than we've ever been before. And there's been a great attack in our society on people labeled conspiracy theorists. That destroys people's reputations, in some cases can destroy people's lives. Because now they have associated conspiracy theory with far right. I'm not far right. I don't have white supremacy in my heart. Some people do, some people don't. And some people are called far right when they're just simply moderates. I understand the propaganda matrix we're in. It's real. But because of my unique background, where I come from, in the cosmos, really, I don't identify with a certain level of human consciousness. I identify with something greater. I don't identify with the illusions of separation. And I have been living through this my entire life. 9/11 happened when I was 21 years old and changed my life forever. It literally inspired me to pick up the microphone and go down to cable access TV show, cable access, and start a TV show in my hometown of Portland, Oregon. And I believe I was meant to do that. Before my grandfather passed away, he said, I literally don't want to leave this planet until you're on the right path. And he died one day before my first show. And that first show was about 9/11. And I had people volunteering for me at the time that didn't agree with my views. But they helped me anyways because they cared about cable access TV and free speech. And I knew as I hosted that show that a time would come where I may no longer have that platform. And now I don't because I no longer live in Oregon because I can't afford to. I live in poverty. And I've been forced out to a certain degree because the modern reality that we live in and how hard it is for certain people to get a job that can earn a livable income. When you go down a road of speaking the truth and people see that you're speaking differently, they judge you based on that and other aspects about yourself. You think it's been easy being in this body since 9/11? Speaking outside of the box of the left and the right? I hear this phrase, birds of a feather flock together. Well, I'm mixed, and I believe based on that, both sides of my family to a certain degree have rejected me because I'm not quite like them, whether it be culture, religion, or else. I've been my own, a black sheep, if you will. Both sides of the family. And as a result of that, I've been isolated from family for most of my life. And that's the reality. The reality is there are so many forms of hatred out there right now that certain people can be targeted based on things that they cannot control, all because of propaganda and the influence of fear. Fear of people that look a certain way because of the so-called threat of terrorism. And it's sad there are so many people that learn about false flags, that learn about staged events, that don't suspect certain official stories. There's people that question it if their own demographic is being accused of a crime, then they'll question it. But if it's a certain event in Europe or somewhere else, they often don't. You see, there could be some forms of mind control that are being used to cause certain immigrants to act out and commit certain acts of crime. Then there are certain people that have just been traumatized their whole life that should be receiving mental health care where they're from. They shouldn't be forced to leave their homes, but their homes have been bombed back to the Stone Age. So you have refugees as a result of what the West has done. I don't think the global elite or the people in power are helping Muslims. I think in many ways they've harmed Muslims and they're setting them up for a fall in the future because there's no curtailing the far right. It is a global movement, just as the so-called Antifa and controlled left is a global movement. They're both controlled. So what happens down the line in 5 years, 10 years, when there's a large population of immigrants and a large hateful movement in response to that? You have conflict. What happens when there's no food? What happens when there's no money? What happens when people are living in close quarters and there's a lack of resources? You already have conflict. So we're already feeling that conflict right now with what's happening with the economy, with the high cost of rent and homes. People resent each other more now than they ever have before. And they're more divided by the illusions of separation, what we perceivably see about ourselves and others, what labels we are. People are literally following a new dark religion based on the illusions of separation. Because of 9/11, the controlled event, and many things that have happened since that time. I have yet to see Muslims and Afghans support the work that I've done. And it hurts, it's heartbreaking, because I give a shit about Afghanistan and what's happening right now with people starving. And there should be more attempts to bring us together, regardless of race, religion, language, to expose the things that need to be exposed. Otherwise, well, we know what happens next. You could look at that old saying, first they came for the communists and I wasn't a communist, then they came for this group and I wasn't that. First they came for the Catholics, the Christians, and I wasn't a Christian, wasn't a Catholic, wasn't a Muslim. Then they came for me. You see, that's the mentality people have, and they got to snap out of it. That's all I got to say. So I've talked for years about the solar influence over human behavior. We often see more fights, battles, wars, conflicts, and for some, spiritual experiences, moving to new places, engaging in a new job or a new activity. We're affected in different ways by these cosmic forces. I've always believed that we're connected to the heavens in some way, shape, or form, but most are unconscious of it. But if you become conscious of it, you can discipline yourself to not overreact. And despite all the knowledge that I have in my head about this topic, that still hasn't prevented me in my own life from overreacting. So we've all gone through tremendous change for a number of different reasons in the last couple of years, and it's because of the energy, not just because of the so-called health event. It's what's taking place in the cosmos. It just happens to be synchronized with what's happening down on the ground. And I don't claim to know where we're going to go from here, whether it's going to be a great awakening or a great victory or a great enslavement. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I don't have a great feeling about it. There's an ominous feeling in the air. I want to note right now that we have seen news of a green comet. I don't have the exact name of it in front of me, but the last time we saw a comet in the sky that was bright, in some cases keeping people up at night because of the energy, was the summer of 2020. It was called Comet Neowise. And before the George Floyd protests, there was a significant solar flare, an X-class solar flare, which was the strongest solar flare of that year in 2020. This is not the first time I've seen that correlation between the sun and increased unrest. And we could see people of different political persuasions and populations around the world speaking different languages entirely affected in a similar way. And I've been also proposing that the true powers that be have this information and they weaponize it against the human population. Now we have AI rising, Chat GPT, a few things to say about that. What timing for it to be brought out as we see robots in many cases in the news replacing jobs, as we see stories about drones from Walmart delivering to people's homes. We've already been prepared for this through many Terminator movies and many articles stating the facts that by a certain point in time, the robots will be replacing our jobs. Chat GPT is said to affect the job market as well in the future, as Microsoft, along with many other corporations, lay off many people. So bringing it back to the main theme here, we're going through massive change here, economically, socially, politically, and it's synchronized, it's timed with these astrological events, these cosmic events. We're also going through a new moon, and the There's another YouTube channel by the name of Donut and Donut Factory. And he was talking about Davos being timed with the new moon of January 21st, just a few days ago. And keep in mind, the effects of the new moon are felt in the days prior and the days after. Usually 3 days before and 3 days after. I always feel the new moon, I always feel the full moon, and they feel different at different times of the year based on astrological influences. And I'm not an expert on that, don't claim to be, and I'm not trying to be necessarily an astrological person, but I can't deny the feelings that I've had throughout my whole life when we go through these changes. And that includes 9/11. 9/11 happened when we had an increase in solar flares. It was one of the largest solar cycles in recent decades. We've seen weaker solar cycles lately. But 9/11 in the 2000s was a time of great change and a lot of movement forward for the alternative media after that event that led to these wars. We need to become aware of more things than just the headlines on the ground. And we need to attempt to look at a larger picture and attempt to use this knowledge to improve our personal lives. So in this time period that we're in, with increased solar activity as of the last couple of weeks, you can learn about that at spaceweather.com, new moon, and a green comet that hasn't been around for 50,000 years since the time of the Neanderthals. At least that's what we're told. And I look at Twitter and I see fighting. I see fighting in the streets in New York City. I see fighting in the streets at a freaking football game where people even of the same team are beating each other up. And we see an increase in violent crime all across the nation. And people don't seem to be able to connect the dots, but it is connected. And we're not going through an eclipse now, but that's another time in which we see an increase in unstable behavior. We're bombarded with energies that we don't understand. And what's concerning about the future is how 5G, 6G, AI is going to be potentially throwing off our circadian rhythm and our natural connection to the sun. It's already happened. It's already begun. These cell phones are basically required to function somewhat in this day and age. It affects our health. It affects our mind. And so many other things. Being online all day leads to many people being radicalized in far left and far right echo chambers. Many, many echo chambers exist today on the internet where people can just stick around their own political bias and be fed the information that they're told. I don't associate with either extremes of the polarity. I could define myself as being somewhat in the middle or even outside of those boxes entirely. But there are things that I agree with or have in common with various people around the world. And I choose to never let it become a left or a right thing. I choose to declare my independence, my independent mind, body, and spirit for now till the end of time, because I don't want to be co-opted. So I think that we need to look at the larger picture beyond what's in the mainstream media. People criticize the mainstream media for good reason, but there's many things that influence people that come from the mainstream. There's a mainstream left and there's a mainstream right, and they seem to coordinate propaganda between each other in some way, shape, or form. I know most people don't see it that way, but I see it that way. That's why we only have two political parties. That's why there's such control over the left and the right. The point I want to make here in this video is that I believe it's an agenda to divide the people during this time and keep everyone fighting and to use technology for that purpose. Whereas without the propaganda, without the social media as it is today, without all the attempts to divide us and frighten us, there would be more peace. There would still be conflict. People would still get upset. People would still be responding to the energy, but it wouldn't be as psychotic, in my opinion, as it is today with the propaganda. There is anti-white propaganda, anti-black propaganda, anti-Middle Eastern propaganda, anti-Hispanic, anti-Asian. They basically have enough flavors out there for you that you have an option which flavor you would like to taste or partake in. And I'm here to tell you now, as I've said for years, you don't have to participate in the stage-managed World War III/Illusions of Separation program. You can be better than that. You can make it a goal to evolve your consciousness during this time and to not be duped in the same ways that we've been duped in the past. I've been duped by people. I've been misled. And I've had to learn from my lessons, and it's been difficult. So no matter how much someone thinks they know, there's always another revelation that they don't know that they should be striving to understand. So right now, I listen to a number of different people in the alternative media, independent media, and I take the information that relates to me and I leave the rest. There's no one that I trust 100%. And there's a lot of people that I used to trust that I don't trust anymore. They may have some good things to say, but they may be clouded by the illusions of separation and affected in some way by what the global elite has done to them. This propaganda that we've seen that's divided us has all been a part of the agenda. And now with the so-called health event, there are people that have been vaccinated that don't want to see good things in the lives of those that are unvaccinated. They wish them ill in some ways. On the other hand, there's also examples of people that are not vaxxed that don't like the pressure to be vaxxed, that want to see ill and harm coming to those that have taken the vax. Both mentalities are unstable. We should be concerned for each other's health and the things that are taking place, and should work harder than ever before to educate people about the threats that exist in our world, instead of this type of by design, infight, self-sabotage. And 2012 wasn't the end of the world, but after we passed that threshold of 2012, 2013, I've seen a great level, a large opening in the earth, if you will, a portal to darkness. A portal of darkness seemingly opening upon the earth after 2012, and a lot of unstable things happening after that period. And in my own life, a lot of things were stable for me up until 2011, 2012. Then I started traveling and then going to different places and having my experience in Colorado. And here we are now in 2023, and I am very concerned about the collective direction that we are headed. Some of the other things that people are talking about is money missing from people's bank accounts. Bank of America has been mentioned. There's also talks about injecting the meat supply with loving potions, whatever you want to call it. Here I am on Facebook uploading this, and I don't even know what I'm allowed to say anymore, but it is a psyops for us to be divided to the degree that it is, because look at where we are now. Society is collapsing. We're going into hyperinflation. People are more connected to their smart devices than ever before, which connects them to the mind control, which connects us to the AI. And a lot of people that may be against these things have already been using these technologies for years without even realizing it, without even realizing in some cases when they're being misled by misinformation. People should really study the events from a nonpartisan perspective of the last decade and look at it as a science, the science of a society divided by design to bring forth a specific outcome. So I'm going to conclude it there for this video on January 24th, 2023. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I've suffered in my own personal life because of the things that I have said and things that I have reported on, and it has been a wild ride. I don't know where it's going to go from here, but this is where I'm looking at the world right now, how I see things unfolding, and there's a lot more that I can say, but we'll leave it there for now. Sometimes in this life, we have to directly turn to God because no one else can help, period, because they're human. And we're dealing with evil, dark forces that are beyond human. They come from the unseen realms. There's different names for these entities. Different religions have a name for them. Some call them the jinn, some call them the archons. But we shouldn't be programmed from cradle to grave to be eternally afraid of these entities, because we have our own strength. That's what makes us human. I've stood against these evil forces for a lifetime, and I feel like I felt the backlash. And I feel like it's been a lifetime of recycled trauma, and perhaps from lifetime to lifetime. Well, I don't want the next to be a continuation of the same, because I may have continued to make the same mistakes. I want to break free from this type of a place, this type of a soul prison, a prison planet for souls, where we are under direct mental, physical, and spiritual attack. I want to be free of that. Others want to be free of that. I am not alone in feeling this assault from the Matrix itself. A lot of people use that as a buzz term. Some people have been using it for years, though, to describe our world in a certain way, a simulation. A lot of people don't know what it really means to take the red pill. That's been so co-opted politically towards the right. Most people have no idea what the Matrix is and how it manipulates their senses. This very world, this very reality, how it dupes people into tribalism. So many people are caught up in the illusions of separation program based on what other people look like. And this is like the greatest deception. This is like the greatest challenge for mankind to overcome. And because of the woke movement and the agendas that are there behind Antifa and BLM, a lot of people don't want to hear about racism or the plight of suffering people overseas, heaven forbid, victims of war, because it's been misused for propaganda, these so-called social justice movements. There hasn't been a real anti-war movement, and because of that, society has suffered, and it's forgotten about the things and people that matter. It's forgotten about the blood on its hands. If you want to talk about being better people, in some cases people talk about white guilt. Not that you can see any with regards to the Middle East foreign occupations, only with regards to black people in the United States. Why is that? There shouldn't necessarily be any guilt per se, but an attitude of we're not going to repeat the mistakes that have been done by the people of power, the people that came before us. We're not like that. We're going to live a different way. Here's how. And be actively creating this reality for the positive, instead of being another slave, a mind slave. And even if someone is physically a slave, to having a job to make money, to survive, to pay rent, they can still free their mind in their off time or support others that are doing the great work. See, the evil in this world wants to disrupt community. You got to be careful when you're trying to break outside the system and you don't want to be a slave anymore. And there are these communities in the countryside that will welcome you with open arms. People can be co-opted. You have to have discernment. You have to know where people are energetically. Just because people say they all want to survive the coming disasters that are obviously coming upon the planet, and some of them are already here, doesn't mean that we're all right for each other. There's been plenty of time for people to use the available technological resources and social media to find each other and to screen each other out. Because I believe there's a lot of people that may be from past lives, friends, family, or associates. Maybe co-authors of books they've written in a galaxy far, far away, where they've exposed the system another way, somehow. And there could be people that were our arch nemesis from other lifetimes that we come across in this lifetime. But I'm not going to push forth the idea of reincarnation on everyone, but I do think that we are in some sort of a trap in this simulation, and we need to free ourselves from it. We're in this situation in which to do the right thing in this world means that certain people will suffer. And I know how I've suffered. I certainly don't share it all. And I know how difficult it is to keep moving forward, speaking the truth, because of all the threats that are upon the horizon. So a lot of people become afraid. They don't even pick up the microphone at all or even try at all. See, it's like for the soul to evolve, certain things have to happen that may put the body at risk or the life at risk. when we're dealing with this type of evil and power. And we're not talking about violent response, we're talking about intellectualism. We're talking about spiritual analysis of our relationship to these systems of control and what's beyond it. We're living in a day and age where many people see this as the collapse of our civilization, a cyclical event. We're not too far away from the year 2012, and I'm not so sure our world didn't go off the deep end after that year. In some ways, it has. We've seen society fall back or regress in so many ways since that year. My life has not been the same since I've left my home state just years before 2012. After that, it's been nonstop travel, and nowhere's felt like home. This certainly doesn't feel like home, although I'm to call it home at present. But the state doesn't feel at home. When I left my home state, it was no longer home. And this planet itself may not be our true home. And I'm not alone in longing for a return to the true home. Home, kingdom, heaven, but a place beyond this place, absolutely. Where there are more people like of a certain frequency or understanding. But there is a reason why we're alive, and evil doesn't come against evil. It comes across, in many cases, people that are standing up against evil and trying to wake people up. It's some sort of natural order here on earth. And spiritual attack is a way of life, so we have to overcome that. And not let our life's path be diverted. The world has done some fucked up things, yet there are awake individuals, there are awake souls that can see the agenda playing itself out. However, if you are able to see, you can be considered crazy. Until, of course, the mainstream media begins to admit what was said years ago by some of us. Warnings of World War III between China, Russia, and the United States. Of course, people are still fucking stupider than dog shit. They're still just headlining China versus the US. They're not talking yet about China and Russia versus the US because, again, it's dog shit intelligence. Do you understand? It's dog shit level. It's in the fucking toilet. That's where people are at, because it's not just fucking China. It's China and Russia, and don't you fucking forget it. The 2007 war games of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization should have woke your asses up, but apparently it did not. So, moving on. Therapy, calm, meditation, money, 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 but that's what most people are oming for. They're oming for that money, money, money. They're praying for the status, they're praying for the power, they're praying for the pussy, they're praying for the house, and yet God can strike them down through a heart attack or anything else at any moment that the Creator wants to take you back. We have to be able to have conversations with the Creator. It's not a one-way street. I've got to get back on the saddle. I've got to get back in the ring. I've got to do the things that need to be done. I need to say the things that need to be said. I just wrote a long letter to my father, and there is an energetic release because it is done. I rely on a spiritual power first and foremost, but at times I'm tested. I'm in an environment, ladies and gentlemen, of the jury and the audience that are listening to the sound of my voice, wherever you are on the planet. I am living in a hellscape. There is murder here. Do you understand? Red rum, red rum. There is murder here. There are killings here. There are home invasions here. There is poverty here. There is mental illness here. I wasn't put into a position to blow the whistle, but I am in the spirit of a whistleblower. Exposing the things that need to be exposed, discussing the things that need to be discussed, because the truth is healing. The truth is not toxic. The truth is healing. And you can take that to the bank. So there's going to be plenty of people out in this world that claim to be healers, that claim to be seers, that claim to this and claim to that, and they aren't even able to look at reality as it is. Yet they're looking to heal others. You see, it does help ourselves when we heal others, when we try to heal others. But if we don't protect our own energy, it can be disastrous. In many ways, I was trying to heal my audience from delusions regarding many fake news headlines, and there is fake news. Facebook knows all about fake news. And if you're honest with yourself and you've been on Facebook for 10 years, you've seen a shitload of fucking fake news that has tried to bait you in one direction or the other. There's also accurate information. But people today lack the natural born intuition to sense with your sixth sense energetically when information is false. I have that gift. I can sense if something has an energetic frequency of truth to it or falsehood to it. And the same goes for individuals. We have these abilities within us. And we can become traumatized by having abilities because this hellscape world can punish us at times when we share our light, and most especially when we try to help others with their delusions and their illnesses and their sicknesses. The world wants us to just be selfish. Just go out and make that money. Just go out and get that pussy, excuse the language. Just go out and get that dick. Just go out and get that person. Just go out and get that car. Just go out and get that. Life is more than going out and getting fucking crap. My father says to me over Christmas, you're 43, you're nowhere in life. You need to think about these things. People are usually settled by your age. What the fuck, dude? What the fuck is wrong with you? You have had 15, 20 years to look at everything your son has said to the public, and you haven't even looked, or you have looked, but you have said nothing. Don't you lecture me, and don't you act like you're a fucking Sufi on your Facebook page as you sit in your garden and you twiddle your fucking fat thumbs. Don't you act like you're a Sufi, because you're not a Sufi. A Sufi would not be obsessed with status, with money, with power, with reputation, with control, with abuse. That's not the way of the Sufi. And if you think that's the way of the Sufi, brother, you got another thing coming. Good morning. It is February 10th, 2023. And we're about a week out from the Grammys, featuring Sam Smith and what many have called a satanic ritual, featuring women in cages. This brief podcast is going to focus on what the symbolism may be regarding the imprisonment of women being featured on stage. It's something that I've talked about for years. I'm going to say this at the beginning, though. YouTube is somewhat of a problem. In its attempt to cater to advertisers, it seems very unfriendly to videos like this that are concerned about our future on the planet, our future as a species, as individuals, standing up for our freedoms. We're in some serious dark ages. And YouTube is a platform that I've trusted for years, that I've used for years to get the word out. And now it seems to be, in some cases, against our freedoms, against our content, against our ideas, maybe in some cases against our soul. We are, after all, dealing with corporations. But I'm going to make this video anyways in hopes that it can reach the right people. As I've made videos before that have reached people and gotten people to think. I'm not trying to be super controversial. I'm not trying to be left or right. I'm simply trying to show the people that over a period of time, we've seen images featuring the enslavement of women. We've seen the bombardment of pornography in our society and the effect of it. And I believe this is a long-term programming for the imprisonment of at least a portion of the female population in the future. This is like the devil's agenda. And so it's art imitating life when you see the satanic ritual playing out at the Grammys and people cheer to this type of imagery. I want to take you back about 10 years to the 2013 period, in which at that time I made a video where I was focusing on the behaviors of the people during the holidays, Black Friday specifically, the Black Friday behaviors. And there was one video that I featured years ago showing crowds and crowds of women lining up to get either free underwear or a discount at Under 21 or Forever 21 or whatever these stores are named. I'm not much of a
I don't exactly go shopping for women, so I'm not familiar with all the different stores that are out there that market towards women's clothing. But it seemed to be, watching that clip of all these people crammed into this tiny space where they would be vulnerable in a emergency. And my imagination was going in different directions. Like, what if people were duped into being at a certain place at a certain time in order to get a certain product or a certain discount? And instead of that, they ended up enslaved in some way, shape, or form. And so I've been trying to bring this up for a number of years, or being programmed towards enslavement, towards being enslaved and enslaving others. And that's part of animalism. We have to fight off the spiritual warfare that's taking place that wants us to be like animals. And I don't mean to put down animals or place humans above them to a certain degree, but we do have consciousness as human beings. We have an intellect, we have a mind, we have a spiritual connection to something greater than ourselves. We have an ability to be more than animals, than slaves, than slave owners. Because base primitive psychology is either to be a slave master or a slave itself. And there's so much in this world that's trying to attract people into this mindset. The irony of this whole spectacle is that it was sponsored by Pfizer, which is obviously one of the vaccine companies. And many say that's all we need to know. And it's very alarming, because I personally hope that many people will survive the vaccine, that their bodies will override it. It's very disturbing to think that there's been an agenda to get rid of us at this time. It may be possible, it may not be possible, but without a doubt, there is at least a plan to drive us into a third world war conflict between the East and the West. And I believe that we could see the beginnings of that in the time period that we're in right now. And so if we were to experience a power outage, a breakdown of the system, many women would be vulnerable to abduction. And the thing about human trafficking is a human can be sold over and over and over again, as opposed to a drug or something like that, which is only sold once. So it's always been my concern that these data hacks have been a part of something greater, larger, in order to get the information, all types of information regarding the American people. So this is, in a way, an apocalyptic scenario that is beyond what some people have thought. Some people have simply thought of just a collapse scenario where we go straight to the collapse and we go straight to the Stone Age. There could be a period in time before we get to that point. There could be a period in time in which there's a series of power outages, but not a major great one that takes out the whole grid, but maybe just certain parts of it or temporarily, which creates a certain amount of chaos on the ground. And a power outage or an EMP attack could be used to justify a counterattack. And so the point is, mutual assured destruction is a possibility. And any type of reality like that would obviously result in mass enslavement of men and women, but especially women. And this is why they have fought so hard to divide the men and women, to demonize men. It's a dark agenda, so we don't protect each other, so we don't heal each other, so we don't love each other. And it's important for there to be love among society, not necessarily romantic love, but a compassion and empathy, a love for each other. And the events that we've experienced, especially the last few decades, have taken us away from that. There's a lot of people that talk about diversity in a positive sense. But they fail to understand that we have to overcome certain programming to have a peaceful coexistence. And a lot of people aren't willing to give up that programming, to see through the lies, to see how we are being turned against each other by design. And the media is playing a huge role in this. And the big media that we're talking about is not limited to CBS, ABC, the networks. It does include big tech. And so I'm very concerned about the rise in hacking, other attacks on the American people. The surveillance balloon was a major confirmation to me that my years of warning were not in vain, that there was something coming. And we can see it here now as China is not happy with the United States as it has not returned the Chinese spy balloon. And so this is going to be another wedge, another issue between the East and the West, not to mention what's taking place in Ukraine with Russia, which are expected to escalate their assault in the next week on the 1-year anniversary of the invasion. So I want to find some concluding thoughts here. I can understand how it could be very scary to come across this information as a woman. I've tried to warn women for years, and I haven't been very successful at reaching the amount of people that I've liked to. It's come across as fear-mongering to some, and it's unfortunate because what I'm seeing is the symbolism, is the preparation, the predictive programming. And people can easily sleepwalk themselves into enslavement without realizing what happened, how it happened, and who did it. So hopefully this video shines some light on this recent Grammys spectacle. Thank you for listening. So one of the things that I've noticed for years, but especially recently, is that there's a number of people out there that claim to be intuitives, that claim to be healers, that claim to want to help people, offering their services all over Facebook. There's so many groups, telepathy and energy clearing, psychics and psychic ability. But when you get down to it, I do believe that a lot of us are psychic, but there's also a lot of interference. Through the psychic channels, interference can come through and information can be distorted. I can see how easy it is for a lot of people out there that are not truly grounded, that are not truly tapped in, how easy it is for dozens and dozens of people out there that offer their services to total strangers, how they get turned off so quickly when they hear about someone's issues, let alone if they talk about current events or events that may occur in the future, often called conspiracy theories. It's amazing to see how quickly they take off. Now, this could be because of a lack of consciousness within them. It could also be the foreign interference, that is, energy or entities or consciousness outside of ourselves that interferes and sabotages our online engagements and our regular world as well, but especially online. You know, there's a book out there called Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune. I believe it was written in the 1930s. She's written a number of other books, including The Magical Battle of Britain. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. And in this book, there's a lot of information, but it was a book written 100 years ago, or almost 100 years ago. It doesn't take into account the internet and the type of interference that we go through online. And there's all different types of interferences that I have experienced with regards to my computer, with regards to Facebook. I believe that this is a way to try to influence someone, you know, behavior modification, to influence someone to not post, to not be active, to not share from the heart, to self-censor. You know, there's certain posts out there that'll get through on the algorithm, and there's certain posts out there that no one will see. In a number of ways, the world has punished me. People in the world, the system itself has been very much allergic to my information. And many people can act like they have an allergy to the truth, going back to a lot of people act they're intuitive, but they lack the maturity to face the news as it is. It's easy to call certain things a conspiracy theory. It's easy to call certain things delusions or to label certain things and certain people mentally ill. There's nothing stable or healthy about being well adjusted to a sick world. There's actually another quote that I can share with you. It is from a website that deals with spiritual matters. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And that quote is attributed to Judy Krishnamurti. So we have a lot of people out there that are well adjusted to a sick society, and they don't realize that. There's a lot of denial about air pollution, contaminants in the food. There's been a lot of denial about a great number of things for years, and we're now living in the age of many things being revealed. This is a time of tension. This is a time of stress. This is a time of trauma, but there is much information that is being revealed for those that are willing to look at it. And the truth can be traumatizing, but we should heal. We should seek to heal from the traumas that are induced into us by this world, because it can affect our soul and our soul's evolution in this planetary prison planet insane asylum. How do we escape the insane asylum? We have to heal ourselves. Now, we can benefit from attempting to heal others, but ultimately we have to heal ourselves. We are capable, however, through our gift of communication, and it is a gift, to share information and ideas that are healing. So understanding reality as it is, corruption, global corruption as it is, can be healing to someone that has been mesmerized by the Matrix. Now, with regards to Andrew Tate, he drops this term all the time, the Matrix, the Matrix, the Matrix. But the Matrix that he speaks about is not the exact Matrix that I'm speaking about. Because the Matrix that I'm speaking about is one in which we rise above the need to be popular, the need for materialism. Sure, this Matrix wants us poor. Sure, this Matrix wants us dependent. So money is important. And I've suffered a lot in my life as a result of poverty and a lack of money. But it is not the ultimate goal in this incarnation. It has nothing to do with rising above this matrix. We have all these cultures around the world, from Islam to Christianity to the Gnostics to the East Indians, on and on and on it goes, where this has been talked about for thousands of years, the true plight that humankind, that womankind is facing on this planet today. And yet now we're in a period in time in which to speak about those things could be considered mentally ill. Yet at the same time, we look at the newswire and they're talking about an alien invasion. They're talking about aliens landing physically that are 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall in a backyard in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the YouTube algorithm will promote it. We can see also the YouTube algorithm promoting a video called Why There's Going to Be a Far-Right Backlash. And the young man in his early 20s, in his videos, he just attacks the left, but he doesn't look at the left-right paradigm. And so many people are looking forward to some sort of right-wing backlash. Other people might be looking forward to a left-wing backlash. That does not change the nature of consciousness on the planet. That's just conflict. Who's in power? Who's in control? Who controls the town square? Who's the loudest? Who's on the air? That's about manipulation. Okay, spirituality is not about manipulation. So we are at a critical point in time where we are going to go through some heavy, heavy shit. We already are. It feels like it's eclipse right now, but we've already passed the eclipse, but it's like the effects of the eclipse are still long lasting. And don't forget, there is an eclipse that will be seen throughout many parts of the United States in April of 2024. As I said before many, many times, we are likely to see major world events take place at this time. And the people in power are also affected by these celestial events. The eclipses, the solar flares, the new moons, and they can come under possession. Many of them are already under the control of something. So keep that in mind as we go through these energy changes, because we need to clear out the programming. We need to literally deprogram from the matrix. And yes, everybody's going to have their own idea of the matrix. That much is clear, but you can call it the simulation, the false reality, the world in which you and I are residing in now. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to post this to my profile, and I welcome your comments and your thoughts down below. This picture depicts a human being trapped in the city, trapped in the cage, in the grid, if you will. And it was taken about 10 years ago. And since that time, I've spent time in nature, deep in thought, sharing my thoughts on the internet, on YouTube, as I sat in nature, discussing the left-right divide, many of the divisions that we've seen in our society the last 10 years, and just an overall analysis of the zombie culture. And I find myself now, again, back in an urban environment with my hand upon the cage, if you will, metaphorically, spiritually, physically. And it's through this type of a pain, grief, suffering, that one can see, not all can, but some can see, if they choose to, if they have the eyes to see and ears to hear, exactly what's wrong with society. People of certain types of consciousnesses that are alive today can easily see the ways in which the world has fallen. Now, other people claim to see it. They claim to say the world has fallen, we are being punished, or we have been put here for some reason, but they may not be able to articulate the evils taking place today. The real white supremacy, the real black supremacy, the real coalitions of the right wing that are now taking place in front of us, as we see Elon Musk, Kanye West, Nick Fuentes, Alex Jones, Donald Trump, see major developments with these characters and the people that they choose to associate themselves with, the people that they choose to help, the people that they call friends. See, this is the world that we're living in right now. And it's crazier than They Live, the movie. Came out in 1988, where Roddy Piper puts on the sunglasses and all of a sudden he can see the lies, he can see the programming, he can see the disinformation. Well, that's what we're doing. Not everybody can see the lies regarding Afghanistan, regarding Iraq and other countries I'm not even mentioning, regarding Yemen. But that's what it means to truly put on the glasses and see the lies, like in the movie. And a lot of people like that meme on the internet, the They Live meme with the guy in the sunglasses. Most of them don't even mention at all that millions of Muslims have been executed, so to speak, since this so-called attack on the United States, September 11th, 2001. Oh, by the way, now Twitter doesn't want people that question 9/11 to be seen as normal people. They suggest flagging that type of content in the same way, or treating that content in the same way that you would treat a Nazi or a Holocaust denier. And it makes sense to question that day that got us into all these wars. And I've spent years talking about that. It's a headache to get back into. But we live now in a day and age where to speak your truth is to be someone that is at risk of having their content flushed down the toilet. And we have seen YouTube erase so much content in the last couple of years. Not all of it was white supremacist. Some of it is just alternative media that is created outside of the mainstream media. Unique, independent perspectives. And so it's like they want us to go over to BitChute. They, whoever you associate they or them to be. They want us on BitChute in these right-wing echo chambers. Easier to control, easier to influence. And it's a message that's being pushed. So people like myself that don't subscribe to certain ideologies and ideas, we find ourselves on the outskirts of the fringe. Not in the middle of the fringe with a collective, because there's a lot of people into the fringe now. It's a popular dance floor. You're not alone. A lot of friends to be made. A lot of money to be made if you are into that kind of thing, making money off Q, fake Q predictions, and other new age channeled information, predicting a golden dawn of a new age with Trump leading the way. It's garbly goo, but it makes money. And there are people that sell that QAnon garbage nonsense. Yeah, because no one's going to be after them. No one's going to be shutting them down. That's not a message that's being stopped by the forces that be. QAnon is a psyops. So it has been by a deliberate agenda or plan. It has been through that planning stage that we have seen the QAnon as it is today, how it's spread, how it's become so popular with the right wing, how the right wing has become so popular with people that are disenfranchised with the Democrats. I am an independent and I have survived my whole life living outside the box to the left and the right. I've been able to do it. Other people should be able to do it. It's not impossible, but it does require breaking the programming. So I'm very pessimistic about the next couple of years, the kind of programming we're going to see leading into the election. It's not about certain powers that be trying to get Yi elected, Kanye West elected. It's not so much about him winning any presidency. It's about him being influential in this specific day and age. It's about Alex Jones being influential. It's about people going into the arms of Nick Fuentes at cozy.tv, as he can easily promote where he is on these large platforms and grow his audience. That's the agenda. These people and others have been set up for something. Just looking into it spiritually, I could see in the last decade how YouTube has been carrying those in the right wing on its shoulders. They've been carried. They've been promoted by the algorithm. And so even with YouTube censoring certain types of content, it's just as easy to go to another platform if people are into certain ideologies like white genocide or ideologies like blaming the Jews for everything. If they're into that mindset, they do well on BitChute and Odyssey and Rumble, because they're around people, as I said before, that are into that echo chamber. What I'm trying to do is survive mentally, physically, and spiritually in a world in which I don't fit into a box. A world in which the only platform that I use can easily look at me, see my ideas as inferior, and delete me off the internet or the work that I've done over the years. So we are definitely playing with fire. YouTube's not on our side. It's just the biggest game in town, so to speak, and has been for years until it gets replaced. But what will the future be, really, of video sharing? Anonymous video sharing. It's less likely with the ways that things are going, with the clampdown of the surveillance grid. People talking about CBDCs, digital currencies, digital IDs, things of that nature. So we are still in the Wild West, so to speak, of the internet to a certain degree. Because if you get bumped off one channel or network or website, you can go or start another. Now, what's the world going to be like when we no longer have that option? As they use white supremacy and Nazism in the right wing as an excuse, a convenient excuse to clamp down on the rest of society, on the rest of the content creators. Some of the things that have happened to me are better expressed in a book, but I'd like to continue talking about what I've seen over the years and how unfair the social media algorithm really is and how many things are opposite of what we think. I've been talking about dark spirits or archons for a number of years. I took a break from the internet. Some things had happened to me, some levels of interference that I think came from the dark realms. So I made a decision to stop doing what I was doing, and here I am today reflecting on what I believe to be my experiences with dark entities, what they've done to me, how this evil in the world has manipulated me through other people or attacked me through other people. Now, I'll talk about the last couple of years briefly. I believe as a result of calling out dark forces in the alternative media, that would be the dark side of Alex Jones and what that agenda is all about, along with other things taking place in our world. Many countries bomb back to the Stone Age. I have compassion for those countries and those people. I am half Middle Eastern, so I've also taken a lot of shit from people that are in a dark space. So I've had my own experience in the truth movement where people have rejected me or called me crazy or treated me a certain way because of how I look or because of the stance that I have against their Islamophobia. And that doesn't make me a Muslim or a supporter of Muslims, but I don't believe in demonizing one group and thinking that that is sane or conscious or somehow helping us evolve beyond our slavery. Nor do I agree that it's all about the Jews. I believe that these are dark thought forms that only attract negative entities. So certain people out there that are putting out certain messages, they're surrounded by these entities, in my opinion, and these entities help them become popular and powerful. But if you don't join those entities, if you speak about the system itself and those that are corrupted, you can hit certain buttons and things can happen. You can get their attention. And if you're not fully protected, shit can go down. So I'm here to encourage people to use the comment section to share what works for you religiously. I lived off-grid in a cabin and shared hundreds of videos speaking from the heart as to what the agenda of the Archons really is. And why I find it to be an archonic agenda when we find so much hatred, racism, warmongering, people salivating for a civil war. We could see the archonic energy in Antifa on the far left, and we could see the archonic energy on the far right and surrounding people like Nick Fuentes, Kanye West, and Alex Jones. And what that agenda represents. People coming together over the people that they hate isn't a good thing. It's a bad thing, and it's happening now in our world. I've been the same nonpartisan, independent voice since the beginning in 2004, 2005. I haven't changed. People in this world on various independent media platforms have changed as they go from exposing the left-right paradigm to getting people behind the return to the king. Dun, dun, dun. As we saw many so-called channeled messages out there promoting Donald Trump, endorsing Donald Trump, the Galactic Federation of Life. Galactic Federation, more preparation for globalism in a new world order. Galactic Federation of Life. Ramtha also endorsed Donald Trump while being caught herself in various racist rants that were caught on private camera, on hidden camera. So there is a dark presence in the alternative media that wants to confuse people and associate hatred of certain people with spirituality. The idea that this is a spiritual time. Even QAnon is behind the ascension meme. I mean, to ascend is to ascend within and become a better person, to rise above this kind of a world on a soul level. But to ascend physically is just the modern New Age rewrite of the old Christian rapture, which some say isn't even that old either. Evil Oregon has a great deal of good information about evil entities messing with people's relationships. She talks about Dark Cupid, the love bite. And that's another way the dark entities work. By getting inside someone's head and convincing them something regarding a relationship, or I would even say a place. And I want to be proud of the work that I've done on this planet, whether or not you can find it on Google or YouTube. Because we're here to do specific work, each and every one of us. I want to hear from those of you in the comment section on Facebook or YouTube. What reactions do you have to the material that I've shared? What has helped you? Especially if you're a public speaker and you put yourself out there, which really puts yourself out there to the forces that be. It's a very different experience when you're not a public person and you're not calling out the dark forces. It's a very different reality. That doesn't mean you don't have your own struggle. But when you're on a radar, when you're on a spotlight, you can feel it. What spiritual practices have helped some of you out there deal with some of these archonic entities, or whatever you choose to call them. Again, in Islam, they call them the jinn. In Christianity, they're called the demons. People get hung up on the actual word, but we're talking about evil entities. What works for you? Any other information you'd like to share? I'm open to that. But I hope to be back with more information, more ideas. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for watching this compilation of unpublished videos that range from December of 2022 to June of 2023. Remember, to catch all the blogs, the podcasts, and the videos, you got to be subscribed to alexansary.substack.com. Just enter in your email and you will be subscribed and you will be notified of new content via your inbox. Thank you for watching, and feel free to leave a comment down below. Remember to check out the new YouTube channel, which is where the majority of the new content is now going.